And stomp a bit and connect with the heavens and the earth. Next, we have Tasheena Medina Chavez, who will be speaking about intuitive movement meditation, an integrative, somatic, and contemplative framework for interoceptive awareness, stress regulation, and nervous system resilience. Thank you, Tasheena.
Can we hear me okay? Yes? Okay, I took off my heels, so I'm my original size. I just want to make sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Tasheena Medina Chavez, and I'm very excited to share this work with you. My thesis is Intuitive Movement Meditation, or IMM, an integrative, somatic, and contemplative framework for interoceptive awareness, stress regulation, and nervous system resilience. This project really grew from both lived experience and academic study, and from years of asking myself, what happens when movement becomes more than performance? What happens when the body becomes a place of listening instead of something we disconnect from? Today, I'll be sharing the research, philosophy, structure, and lived experience behind IMM. Before I begin, I just want to express my gratitude to all of our professors, as well as our thesis advisors, Dr. Chappell, Dr. Casa, Dr. Fazio, of course, Dr. Slatoff, and Dr. Carlisle for their endless support. I also want to thank the IMM community and participants, my family, and everyone who supported me through this process. Graduate school while becoming a mom, becoming a wife, an educator, a business owner. It's been a lot. I wouldn't recommend doing all at once, but we are here. And I would like to say I'm so grateful to my husband who is here as well, who's matching me with his wonderful purple tie. I'm really grateful for sharing this today. Talking about stress. Honestly, I think many of us know what it feels like to live here. We live in a world that constantly asks us to push through, stay productive, stay online, stay available, even when our bodies are asking us to slow down. And over time, chronic stress starts becoming normalized. In my thesis, I describe chronic stress as living in a constant state of overwhelm or threat. And that can be emotionally, physically, environmentally, and relationally. For some people, that looks like anxiety. For others, it looks like numbness or burnout, hypervigilance, disconnection, insomnia, or even irritability. And eventually, many of us stop listening to our bodies altogether. We learn to live almost entirely in the mind, while the body starts to feel like somewhere we really don't want to be. That disconnect became one of the core reasons why I created IMM. So today we're going to walk through the introduction, the world we live in, why movement and embodiment matter, interoception, mindfulness, and HRV, yoga philosophy and the kosha model, trauma-informed IMM framework, the program design and assessment, with a closing practice and reflection. Movement was one of the first places I truly felt safe inside myself. I grew up with a lot of instability. I grew up where there was addiction, divorce, financial hardship, constant moving, and a lot of emotional unpredictability. And around age 10, I remember being bullied at school, and I came home emotionally overwhelmed, and I went to my bedroom. I turned on music, and I danced. I felt the need to move. And that moment really stuck with me because that became the first time where I felt my resource to regulate and to process and to be present. IMM was born from this, the intersection of dance, yoga philosophy, somatic awareness, interoception, mindfulness, and the question, how do we help people reconnect to the body as a place of awareness, trust, and inner guidance? One thing I've observed, both personally and professionally, is that many people are deeply overwhelmed but disconnected from their internal world altogether. People are exhausted, emotionally overloaded, living in survival mode, trying to maintain. And in the middle of all that, our bodies are still communicating. It communicates through the breath, through tension, fatigue, anxiety, and sometimes even pain. But many of us were never taught how to actually listen. In my thesis, I talk about the difference between living in the mind versus living in the body. IMM is rooted in the belief that reconnecting to the body may help us reconnect to ourselves. So, why movement? Because movement has the ability to bypass purely intellectual processing and bring us into direct relationship with sensation, breath, emotion, and awareness. Research increasingly supports that embodied and contemplative practices may support stress reduction, emotional regulation, interoceptive awareness, and nervous system resilience. But IMM approaches movement differently than performance-centered spaces. The goal is not, how good do I look? The question becomes, what is my body communicating? Movement becomes less about performance and more about the relationship. One of the central concepts of IMM is interoception. Interoception is our awareness of internal bodily sensations. So things like our heartbeat, breath, tightness, emotion, fatigue, and activation. And what's interesting is that chronic stress can actually disrupt our relationship to those internal cues. Sometimes people become hypervigilant towards sensation. Other times people become completely disconnected from it. IMM tries to create a bridge back toward embodied awareness through movement, breath, grounding, and reflection. Not to force people in the body, but to gently invite people back into relationship with it. Breath also plays a huge role in this work. Research around mindfulness and heart rate variability, or HRV, suggests that slower intentional breathing practices may support autonomic regulation and nervous system flexibility. So in simpler terms, our breath can influence how safe, grounded, or regulated we feel. In IMM, breath isn't treated as something as a rigid performance. It becomes a way of listening, a way of pacing, and a way of returning to ourselves. This work is also informed by yoga philosophy. One framework I draw from is the kosha model, which views human experience as layered and multidimensional. So rather than separating mind from body, this perspective understands us as interconnected. We are physical, we are energetic, mental, emotional, we are intuitive, and we are spiritual. And I often describe this to participants almost like layers are being gently revealed to us over time. Sometimes someone comes into practice thinking that they're physically tense and then realizes underneath that is grief, or they realize that it's fear or exhaustion and burnout. The body is always holding our information, and when we slow down enough to listen, that information can begin guiding us toward awareness and healing. One thing that became really important to me developing IMM was creating practices that felt invitational rather than forceful. So throughout the practice, participants hear language like, I invite you to, or what feels supportive. as well as move at a pace or in a way that feels good to you. Because for many people, especially living with chronic stress or trauma, choice matters, our safety matters, and movement itself becomes meditative. Not because it looks perfect, but because attention starts to return inward. IMM is intentionally trauma informed in its design. That means choice, agency, accessibility, consent, and pacing are all prioritized throughout the experience. Participants are never required to move in a certain way. They can modify, they can observe, they can pause, they can rest. Because regulation cannot come through force. The hope is that participants begin feeling safe enough within the practice to reconnect to their inner resources. IMM is structured as a 12-month program because nervous system work and embodied awareness takes time, especially for people who have spent years disconnected from the body or living in chronic stress. The program is online, as well as there is a 90-minute in-person class where you can dive deeper into the practices that we learn online. Each month builds progressively, starting with grounding, self-study, resilience, breath awareness, release, relational connection, and integration. The idea is not to transform overnight. It's creating consistent opportunities for reconnection over time. One of the things I really wanted IMM to reflect was that understanding, healing, and awareness are layered. So the curriculum builds progressively. The early months focus on grounding and safety, then participants gradually move into deeper self-inquiry, resilience, relational work, and integration. And what I've observed is that when people feel safer in their bodies, they often begin relating to themselves differently. Although IMM is deeply experiential, I also want a framework to be academically and scientifically grounded. So the program includes a proposed quarterly assessment structure throughout the year. The intention isn't to reduce people to numbers, but rather to explore whether shifts in embodied awareness and regulation might also be reflected through assessment tools over time. The framework combines both subjective experience and physiological perspectives. One of the primary tools is the MAIA, which is the multi-dimensional assessment of interoceptive awareness. And what I appreciate about this is that it doesn't just ask you, do you notice what your body feels? It asks you, how do you relate to the sensations? Do you trust your body? Do you trust your intuition? That distinction is really important because many people living with chronic stress are either disconnected from the body or hyper aware of sensation, but without safety or trust. The MAIA helps explore whether participants begin shifting toward a more compassionate and connected relationship with their internal experience. The second assessment is the profile of mood states or POMS. This assessment looks at emotional states such as tension, fatigue, confusion, anger, depression, and vigor. And again, the goal isn't a diagnosis, it's observing patterns. Because if someone is consistently engaging in contemplative movement, breath awareness, grounding, and reflective practices, we may begin to see shifts, not just physically, but emotionally as well. And honestly, one of the things I witness most in spaces is that people often feel relieved simply having the permission to slow down and actually take notice of what their bodies are saying. So, while IMM is not presented as a replacement for therapy or medical care, the hope is that it may function as a complementary embodied framework that supports people living in chronic stress. Some of the potential areas of change explored in this framework include the greater interoceptive awareness, increased emotional regulation, reduced overwhelm, and greater nervous system resilience. But ultimately, it's less about fixing people and more focused about reconnecting to the self. So after all of the theory and research, I also wanted to show what IMM actually looks and feels like in practice. IMM sessions often begin with grounding and breathwork awareness, followed by somatic warm-ups, guided movement exploration, reflective practices, and integration. The room is intentionally designed to feel welcoming, non-performative, and relational. And something I often remind participants is there's no right way to move. There's no wrong way to move. The invitation is just to notice. And for many people, that permission alone becomes transformative. So before I close, I'd like to offer a brief embodied practice. You're invited to participate in any way that feels supportive and comfortable for you, whether you are here live in front of me or on Zoom. And you may also choose to simply observe. So if you'd like to stand, feel free to stand. Or if you'd like to stay sitting, that's also welcome. And if you're at home, enjoy laying down if you can. So I invite you to either close your eyes, or if you don't want to do that, you can pick a focal point in the room. And just take a moment to connect with the breath. Notice the breath. So as you stand, just tune in to your inhale, tune in to the exhale. I invite you to give yourself permission to relax the shoulders, the hands. Allow the feet to sink into the ground beneath you if you're standing or sitting. Or if you're lying down, feel the support on your back. When you are ready, take an inhale and then an exhale. Place the right hand on the heart and left hand on the belly. Feel the connection between the hands and the body. Notice the sensation, any texture, any temperature. Take your breath to your hands. And as you are breathing, fill up the body, fill up your hands with gratitude. I invite you to think of a person, place, thing, experience of gratitude. And when you are ready, place the hands out in front. And you can gently open your eyes and just look at the hands for a moment. You look at the tops of the hands, look at the palms of the hands. And looking at your hands and filling with that gratitude. Remembering all the dishes you have washed, all the laundry you have folded, the things you have cleaned, the pets you have pet, the tears you have wiped, whether they be on yours, your own face, or someone else. The stories they hold that only you know. And when you are ready, release. And I invite you to sit down. And I say thank you so much for that practice. But one of the things this work continues to remind me of is that many people are not lacking strength. They're lacking spaces where they feel safe enough to reconnect to themselves. It's part of our inner guidance system to tune in and to tune out the world around us at times when it's most important. And when we begin listening to it with more awareness, compassion, and presence, change can begin to happen from the inside out. IMM offers possible pathway toward that reconnection. Thank you for being here and being a part of my journey. I'm truly grateful. If you are interested in supporting the work and learning more, feel free to scan. Thank you.
Wonderful. We have one more presentation, which will be followed by a 15